My daughter Marjorie looked up at me. She was drawing with some coloring paper, and she looked up and she said, "Oh, Dad, what a beautiful noise outside."
4 children, a global music icon, and a family story most fans have never heard. While Neil Diamond spent decades filling arenas with unforgettable hits, his life as a father unfolded quietly behind the scenes. Away from the spotlight, his children built lives far removed from the roar of the crowd. In 2026, their journeys reveal a fascinating legacy that goes far beyond the music. Neil Diamond built one of the most remarkable and enduring careers in popular music, becoming a defining voice of American songwriting and performance for more than 5 decades. With his powerful baritone voice, deeply emotional lyrics, and unmistakable stage presence, he transformed himself from a struggling songwriter into one of the best-selling musicians in history. Diamond's journey began in the early 1960s in New York's famous music hub, the Tin Pan Alley. Before becoming a star himself, he earned recognition as a talented songwriter, creating hits for other performers. One of his earliest breakthroughs came when the Monkees recorded his song "I'm a Believer" in 1966. The track became a massive #1 hit and one of the most successful singles of the decade, immediately establishing Diamond as a songwriter of exceptional commercial appeal. Soon afterward, Diamond began gaining recognition as a performer in his own right. Songs like "Cherry, Cherry," and "Girl, You'll Be a Woman" soon introduced audiences to his distinctive style, melodic, emotional, and deeply personal. His music blended pop, folk, and rock influences, helping him stand out during a period when the music industry was rapidly evolving. The late 1960s and early 1970s marked Diamond's true rise to superstardom. During this time, he released a series of major hits, including "Sweet Caroline," which became one of the most beloved sing-along anthems in popular music history. The song's unforgettable chorus and uplifting spirit made it a cultural phenomenon that continues to resonate with audiences at concerts and sporting events around the world. Diamond's songwriting abilities also flourished during this era. His hit "Cracklin' Rosie" reached #1 on the Billboard charts in 1970, becoming his first chart-topping single as a performer. Around the same time, his emotional ballad "Song Sung Blue" became another huge success, further solidifying his reputation as a master of heartfelt storytelling through music. In 1973, Diamond delivered one of the biggest hits of his career with "You Don't Bring Me Flowers," later famously recorded as a duet with Barbra Streisand. The song showcased his ability to convey vulnerability and emotional depth, qualities that made his music resonate with listeners across generations. Diamond's career expanded beyond music charts into film when he starred in the 1980 movie The Jazz Singer. While the film itself received mixed reviews, the soundtrack became a major success. Songs such as "Love on the Rocks" and "America" became iconic entries in his catalog and demonstrated his ability to combine theatrical storytelling with pop music appeal. Throughout the 1980s, 1990s, and 2000s, Diamond remained a powerful live performer. His concerts were legendary for their energy and emotional connection with audiences. Whether performing in large arenas or historic venues, he had a rare ability to make every crowd feel personally engaged in the music. His achievements were widely recognized within the music industry. In 2011, Diamond was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, an honor celebrating his immense impact on popular music. Over the course of his career, he sold more than 130 million records worldwide, placing him among the best-selling musical artists of all time. What truly set Neil Diamond apart was his combination of songwriting brilliance and emotional sincerity. His music captured themes of love, longing, hope, and identity in a way that felt both deeply personal and universally relatable. Even decades after their release, songs like "Sweet Caroline" continued to unite audiences in a shared musical experience. Through perseverance, creativity, and an unmistakable voice, Neil Diamond built a legacy that stands as one of the most successful and influential careers in modern music history. Now, let's talk about his children. Marjorie Diamond. Marjorie Diamond is the eldest child of legendary singer-songwriter Neil Diamond and his first wife, Jay Posner. Her birth came during an important transitional moment in her father's life, just as he was beginning to evolve from a behind-the-scenes songwriter in New York's famous Brill Building into one of the most recognizable voices in popular music. During the early 1960s, the Brill Building served as the heart of the American pop songwriting industry, and it was there that Neil Diamond first honed his craft. At that time, he was primarily writing songs for other performers rather than performing them himself. However, as Marjorie was growing up, her father's career began to transform dramatically. Songs like Solitary Man and Cherry helped establish him as a recording artist in his own right, and by the late 1960s, he had become one of the most distinctive voices in American pop music. Marjorie's earliest years were therefore shaped by a period of rapid change in her father's life. While still a toddler, she witnessed the shift from modest beginnings to international recognition. Her father's touring schedule, recording sessions, and increasing public visibility meant that life in the Diamond household was far from ordinary. In 1969, when Marjorie was only 4 years old, her parents' marriage came to an end. The divorce marked a significant turning point for the family. Marjorie and her younger sister remained primarily with their mother in New York, while Neil Diamond relocated to California as his career continued to grow. Though the separation meant that the family no longer lived under one roof, Diamond remained devoted to his daughters and maintained a relationship with them despite the demands of his profession. One of the most charming and widely shared stories about Marjorie occurred during her childhood and would unexpectedly lead to the creation of one of her father's most celebrated songs. During a visit to New York, Marjorie was staying in a hotel with her father when a loud parade passed through the streets below. Like many children fascinated by the commotion of marching bands, cheering crowds, and city excitement, she rushed to the window to watch. Looking out at the bustling scene, she reportedly turned to her father and exclaimed with delight, "Daddy, what a beautiful noise!" The simple phrase immediately caught Diamond's attention. As a songwriter, he had always been sensitive to words, rhythm, and emotion. Something about the innocence and poetry of his daughter's observation resonated with him deeply. Later that same night, inspired by her spontaneous comment and the vibrant energy of the city outside, he began writing a song built around those exact words. The result would become the iconic track, Beautiful Noise, released in 1976 as the title song of the album, Beautiful Noise. Produced by Robbie Robertson of the band, the song captured the energy, chaos, and magic of urban life, transforming the everyday sounds of the city into a celebration of creativity and possibility. Although many listeners interpreted the song as a metaphor for artistic inspiration or the power of music itself, its origin was rooted in a simple, joyful moment between father and daughter. For Neil Diamond, Marjorie's childhood remark became the spark that ignited one of the defining works of his career. As Marjorie grew older, she chose a path very different from her father's highly public life. Rather than pursuing fame or entertainment, she preferred privacy and stability. She built her life away from the spotlight, eventually settling in New York City, where she focused on family and personal pursuits rather than public attention. Despite her decision to remain largely unknown to the public, her connection to her father's legacy remained significant. Through the story behind Beautiful Noise, she became part of one of the most beloved anecdotes in Neil Diamond's songwriting history, a reminder that inspiration often comes from the simplest moments of everyday life. In the mid-1990s, Marjorie reached another milestone when she became a mother herself. Her son, Alexander, was born during that decade, making Neil Diamond a grandfather for the first time. The arrival of Alexander marked the beginning of a new generation in the Diamond family and brought another layer of joy to the celebrated musician's personal life. Though Marjorie Diamond has spent most of her life outside public view, her quiet influence on her father's career remains unforgettable. A child's spontaneous observation from a hotel window ultimately became the seed for one of Neil Diamond's signature songs. In that way, Marjorie's place in music history, though subtle, is forever preserved in the enduring melody and spirit of Beautiful Noise. Elen Diamond. Elen Diamond is the younger daughter of legendary singer-songwriter Neil Diamond and his first wife, Jay Posner. Arriving 3 years after her older sister, Marjorie Diamond, Elen was born during a pivotal moment in her father's career. By the late 1960s, Neil Diamond had already begun his rise from a promising songwriter in New York to one of the most recognizable performers in popular music. Songs such as Cherry, Cherry, and Solitary Man had helped establish him as a rising star, and his career was rapidly accelerating toward international fame. Despite the excitement surrounding her father's growing success, Elen's early childhood was marked by significant changes within the family. In 1969, when she was just a year old, her parents divorced. Following the separation, Elen and her sister were primarily raised by their mother. Their upbringing remained largely centered in the northeastern United States, and later the family moved to New Jersey after their mother remarried. Although their father had become one of the biggest recording artists of the era, Neil Diamond made a deliberate effort to shield his daughters from the pressures and attention that often came with celebrity life. He wanted Marjorie and Elen to grow up with a sense of normalcy, attending school, forming friendships, and experiencing childhood without constant public scrutiny. As a result, the sisters were rarely seen in the media during their early years. While Neil Diamond continued releasing hit albums and touring the world, his daughters were quietly building lives of their own away from the entertainment industry. This private upbringing allowed Elen to develop her own identity and interests, separate from the massive public legacy attached to her father's name. As she entered adulthood, Elen chose a path focused not on music or entertainment, but on humanitarian work. She developed a strong interest in supporting children, particularly those facing serious emotional challenges. Her passion eventually led her to establish the Children Who Never Forget Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to helping young people who had experienced abuse, trauma, or difficult life circumstances. The foundation was created with a deeply compassionate mission to provide support, resources, and public awareness for children who carry the emotional scars of traumatic experiences. Elen believed that childhood trauma could leave lasting psychological effects, and she wanted to create a space where young people could receive both understanding and practical help. Through charity events, community outreach, and awareness campaigns, the organization worked to highlight the importance of early intervention and emotional support for vulnerable children. The foundation's programs aimed to give young people a voice and encourage healing through counseling, advocacy, and public education. Although Elen preferred a relatively private life, her connection to her famous father occasionally brought additional attention to her charitable work. At times, she appeared alongside Neil Diamond at benefit concerts and special fundraising events that supported the mission of her foundation. These appearances helped bring visibility to the cause while also demonstrating the close bond between father and daughter. For Neil Diamond, supporting Elen's philanthropic efforts became a meaningful extension of his own public life. Known for his generosity and involvement in charitable initiatives, he often used his platform to help promote causes that mattered to his family. Beyond her charitable activities, Elen also built a fulfilling personal life. She later married Mitchell Resnick, a respected technology researcher and educator known for his work in creative learning and digital innovation at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Resnick has been widely recognized for developing educational tools that encourage children to explore technology through creativity, collaboration, and problem-solving. In 2004, the couple welcomed a daughter, Avery Max. Her birth marked another joyful milestone in the Diamond family, making Neil Diamond a grandfather once again, and introducing a new generation connected to both artistic and educational legacies. Motherhood became another meaningful chapter in Elen's life. Raising Avery allowed her to experience the same joys and responsibilities that had shaped her own childhood decades earlier, though in a much quieter and more private environment than the one surrounding her father's career. Throughout the years, Elen Diamond has maintained a balance between family life and her dedication to helping others. Unlike many children of famous entertainers, she chose not to pursue a public career built on her father's fame. Instead, she devoted her energy to philanthropy, advocacy, and raising awareness about issues affecting vulnerable children. Her life story illustrates a different kind of legacy within a famous family. While her father's name is permanently associated with chart-topping hits and legendary performances, Elen's contribution lies in compassion, advocacy, and the effort to make a meaningful difference in the lives of children facing hardship. In that sense, the Diamond family legacy extends beyond music. Through Elen's work with the Children Who Never Forget Foundation, it also includes a quiet but powerful commitment to empathy, healing, and hope for the youngest members of society, Jessie Diamond. Jessie Diamond was born on May 1, 1970, the first child of legendary singer-songwriter Neil Diamond and his second wife, Marcia Murphy. His birth came during a period when Neil Diamond's career had already reached extraordinary heights. By the early 1970s, the singer was no longer simply a rising artist. He was a global music phenomenon whose songs dominated radio stations and concert stages around the world. Albums like Hot August Night and hits such as Sweet Caroline had cemented his reputation as one of the most successful performers of the era. As a result, Jessie entered a world filled with music, touring schedules, recording sessions, and sold-out arenas. Unlike his older half-sisters, who were raised primarily away from the touring lifestyle after their parents' divorce, Jessie spent much of his childhood in close proximity to his father's professional life. Growing up during the peak of Neil Diamond's touring years meant that music was constantly present in his environment, from rehearsals and studio recordings to the electrifying atmosphere of live concerts. From an early age, Jessie displayed a natural curiosity about music. Instruments were always nearby, and he quickly became fascinated by how songs were created and performed. Drums, guitars, and microphones were not distant objects in a recording studio. They were part of the everyday scenery of his childhood. As he grew older, Jessie often accompanied his father on tour. For Neil Diamond, bringing his young son along during concert trips was both practical and meaningful. Touring could keep him away from home for long stretches of time, and having Jessie with him allowed him to maintain a close relationship with his son, despite the demanding travel schedule. During some performances, Jessie even appeared on stage alongside his father. These moments were usually informal and playful rather than formal performances, but they gave him a rare opportunity to experience the thrill of performing before thousands of fans. Standing beneath bright stage lights and hearing the roar of a concert crowd left a powerful impression on him. Those experiences helped shape Jessie's own musical interests. Rather than viewing music simply as his father's profession, he began to see it as something he might pursue himself. By the time he reached his early 20s, Jessie had started exploring music seriously. He experimented with several instruments, but he showed particular enthusiasm for the drums. The rhythm and energy of percussion appealed to him, and he began practicing regularly while also learning guitar and experimenting with songwriting. Instead of trying to imitate his father's famous vocal style, Jessie gradually worked to develop his own musical identity. He wrote original songs, explored different musical influences, and spent time refining his skills as both a performer and composer. Eventually, Jessie began appearing more regularly alongside his father during tours. These performances gave him invaluable first-hand experience within the music industry. Touring with an established star meant observing every aspect of professional music production, from rehearsals and sound checks to the complex logistics behind large-scale concerts. As adults, Jesse and Micah maintained a strong bond and eventually collaborated on a variety of creative and business projects. Their partnership reflected a shared desire to contribute to the broader legacy of the Diamond family while also pursuing their own independent paths. For Jesse, music has always been both a personal passion and a family tradition. Growing up in the shadow of a legendary artist could easily have been overwhelming, yet he managed to carve out his own place within that legacy, embracing music without feeling compelled to compete with his father's enormous success. Micah Diamond. Micah Diamond, born in 1978, is the youngest child of legendary singer-songwriter Neil Diamond and his second wife, Marcia Murphy. By the time Micah entered the world, his father had already secured a permanent place in music history. Throughout the 1970s, Neil Diamond had become one of the most recognizable performers in the world, known for powerful live performances and iconic songs such as Sweet Caroline and Song Sung Blue. Albums like Hot August Night had turned him into a global superstar whose concerts drew massive audiences. Unlike his older siblings, who were born during the early stages of Neil Diamond's rise to fame, Micah grew up in a period when his father's career was already firmly established. The intense struggle for recognition had largely passed, and Neil Diamond had entered a more mature phase of his professional life. This period allowed him to balance his continued musical success with a stronger focus on family life. Micah spent much of his childhood in an environment where music was an everyday presence, yet his upbringing was somewhat more stable than the early years experienced by his older siblings. His father had already built a lasting career, meaning the family's life was no longer defined solely by the uncertainty of a rising artist trying to succeed. Still, the lifestyle of an internationally touring musician inevitably shaped the household. Concert tours, recording sessions, and public appearances remained part of the family rhythm. Growing up with a father whose voice filled arenas around the world meant that Micah was constantly surrounded by creativity and artistic expression. During these years, Micah developed a close relationship with his older brother, Jesse Diamond. While Jesse was already exploring music and performing alongside their father, Micah was discovering his own interests in creativity, though in a very different form. In 1994, when Micah was still a teenager, his parents' marriage came to an end. The divorce between Neil Diamond and Marcia Murphy marked the conclusion of a long relationship that had lasted more than 2 decades. Despite the separation, Micah remained closely connected to both sides of his family and continued to maintain a strong bond with his siblings. Unlike his brother Jesse, who gravitated toward music performance, Micah chose a creative path outside of the traditional music industry. Instead of taking the stage, he found inspiration behind the camera. Over time, Micah developed a passion for photography and visual storytelling. The artistic instincts that ran through the Diamond family seemed to express themselves in his work through images rather than sound. He became known as a photographer and creative director, focusing on visual media, design, and modern storytelling techniques. Photography allowed Micah to combine artistic sensitivity with technical skill. Through his lens, he explored composition, emotion, and narrative, capturing moments in ways that reflected a contemporary creative perspective. His work often emphasized visual atmosphere and artistic expression, demonstrating how creativity could take many different forms beyond music. In addition to his work as a photographer, Micah also showed a strong interest in entrepreneurship and technology. As digital media began transforming the creative industries in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, he became increasingly engaged with projects that blended art with innovation. At one point, Micah joined forces with his brother Jesse Diamond to help establish a technology-focused venture known as IAST. The company aimed to explore digital platforms, creative services, and new approaches to media production. Their collaboration highlighted the brothers' shared desire to build something that reflected both creativity and modern technological possibilities. Despite choosing a path different from the musical spotlight, Micah remains an important part of the Diamond family's legacy. His connection to his father's extraordinary career is not defined by performing songs on stage, but by continuing the family tradition of artistic exploration. Over the years, the Diamond family has represented multiple forms of creativity: songwriting, performance, philanthropy, and visual art. Micah's contributions add another dimension to that legacy, demonstrating how creativity can evolve across generations. While Neil Diamond built his reputation through unforgettable melodies and electrifying live shows, Micah has pursued a quieter but equally artistic journey. Through photography, design, and innovative projects, he has created his own identity while still honoring the remarkable cultural influence of his family name. What do you think about Neil Diamond's children? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this, and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.